beside the reading nook. She lit a candle, poured herself a second glass of wine, then sat down and began to read a novel she'd meant to get to for 6 years. No interruptions, no obligations, only the soft creak of the heating vent and the small turning of pages. The next morning, she walked to the public library, filled out the renewal form for her long-expired card, and borrowed 2 books. She passed a corkboard on the way out, cluttered with flyers. One in particular caught her eye. Book Club, every Thursday. Readers and tea, all ages welcome. She smiled and jotted down the time. When she arrived at her condo, a plain white envelope was waiting in her mailbox from the law offices of Dale Ritter. She opened it slowly, standing barefoot in her small entryway, the quiet of the space holding her like an embrace. Inside, a formal summary of the estate plan she'd finalized. No surprises. Everything just as she'd asked. Her home, her savings, her heirlooms, her legacy, carefully designated, secure, unshaken. There was a handwritten note at the bottom. "All done, Janine. You've built something strong and clean. D." She tucked the letter into a folder and placed it in her new desk drawer beside a notepad and a fresh pack of pens. She would use those pens to write letters to her grandchildren, grocery lists, maybe poems. But she would never again use them to beg for appreciation. That role, the one she didn't apply for, the one she'd been drafted into and overqualified for, was no longer hers to play. She walked into the sunroom and pulled open the windows. The lake breeze drifted in, soft and full of lilacs. She had no schedule, just a Thursday book club and a reading nook full of light, and a life that no longer fit in parentheses. The Facebook post dropped just before noon, sandwiched between a sponsored ad for weighted blankets and a photo of someone's toddler covered in spaghetti. Janine wasn't the one to find it, Greta was. She texted a screenshot before lunch. "Wow, that woman has no shame." It was a long paragraph, posted to Melissa's page with no privacy filters. Public, visible, performative. "I never thought I'd see the day when the woman who taught me everything about compassion and patience would turn her back on her family. I'm not perfect. No one is. But being left in silence, being erased from someone's life like I never mattered, it's cruel, especially when there are children involved. Especially when all I ever asked for was help. If you think you know the full story, you probably don't." By the time Janine opened the app, more out of curiosity than anything else, it already had 27 comments and climbing. Some were vague heart emojis, others left prayers or encouraged her to stay strong. A few chimed in with that oh-so-familiar Midwest passive aggression. Family is everything. Mothers sacrifice, daughters forgive. But not all were sympathetic. Buried near the bottom were a handful of quieter voices, women Janine remembered from bake sales and bulletin boards, a fellow widow, the art teacher who once helped Hallie make a glitter volcano, even Barb, the woman who always brought lemon bars to PTA meetings and had once whispered to Janine in the hallway, "You hold that family together." Their comments weren't public. They came through DM. "Hey, just saw the post. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I remember what you did for that school year after year. You deserved better." She's not fooling everyone. Janine read them in her reading nook, legs tucked beneath her, a tall glass of iced tea sweating gently beside her on the windowsill. She didn't cry. She didn't even bristle. She just smiled, a quiet, rueful smile, and sipped her tea. Greta called 15 minutes later. "You see it?" "I did." "You okay?" "I'm drinking peach-iced tea in a sunlit room I picked for myself," Janine said, voice light. "So, yes." Greta exhaled, relieved. "You want me to post something?" "I could. Maybe something subtle. Or maybe not." Janine laughed. Let her wear herself out. People reveal who they are eventually. Later that evening, Janine replied to one of the messages, a woman named Rosa she hadn't spoken to in years, but had always admired for her blunt honesty. Her message was just one sentence: "There's peace in letting go. No defense, no elaboration, just truth." She closed the app for good that night, deleting it from her phone like she was clearing a room. The next day, a message came, not from Melissa, but from Travis. "Hey, just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I didn't handle it well." That was it. No punctuation, no warmth, just a vague offering tossed over the fence. Janine didn't respond, not because she was bitter, because she no longer collected apologies that cost so little. She left her phone on silent, pulled a small notepad from her desk, and jotted a grocery list. Raspberries, oat milk, rosemary crackers, a new puzzle, not much, but everything on it was hers. Outside, the sky blushed pink as the sun began its descent, and Janine stood on her small garden path, barefoot on the smooth stone. She checked the planter boxes. New seedlings had started to push through, small green promises curled like commas, not endings, just breathers. She heard footsteps behind her, Greta's voice calling from the gate. "You decent, or do I need to announce myself?" "I'm only indecent in spirit," Janine called back. Greta stepped into the garden with a bottle of sparkling lemonade and 2 plastic cups. "No PTA gossip today," she said, pouring. "Just sunshine and starch." They toasted quietly, no big declarations, just the clink of plastic and the chirp of birds overhead. Janine looked toward the horizon, where the lake caught the fading light like glass. Melissa could post whatever she wanted. Let the world assume whatever version of her made them feel most comfortable. Janine had no need to explain who she was anymore. She was living it, and she'd never been more visible. The folding chairs in the community center auditorium creaked as people settled into them, murmurs rippling like soft rain across the room. The event was titled in generic, bold letters on the whiteboard outside, "Women Rewriting Their Next Chapter, a Panel Discussion." A flyer with a teacup and a pen sat tucked under each seat. Janine sat on the stage beside 2 other women, one in a power blazer, the other in hand-knit socks and a floral wrap dress. Both had lived through divorces, reinventions, hard stops. Janine was the oldest on the panel, but the microphone didn't shake in her hand when she picked it up. She wore navy blue, not because it was safe, but because it was hers. "Hi," she began, her voice even, clear. "I'm Janine Avery. I'm 64. I spent the last decade of my life playing a role I didn't audition for. Caretaker, fixer, filler of gaps." She paused. "Not mother. That part I chose, and I gave it everything I had." The room quieted fully now, heads tilting forward, eyes fixed. But somewhere along the way, the giving stopped being love. It became expectation, then obligation, then erasure. She held the silence for a breath, then continued. "One day, I realized I wasn't in my life anymore. I was behind it, supporting it, holding it up like a wall someone leans on without thinking." Someone in the front row nodded slowly, her fingers laced tightly in her lap. "I made a choice. I stepped out. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. I didn't abandon anyone. I stopped abandoning myself." The applause started small. A few hands, then more. Then it swelled. Janine didn't look at the clapping. She looked out beyond the lights into the rows of women listening. Many were older, some younger, all of them leaning forward now. Greta, from the second row, lifted her phone discreetly and recorded the whole thing. When Janine stepped down from the stage, she didn't rush. She accepted a few hugs, a few whispered thank yous. One woman, no older than 30, slipped a folded note into Janine's hand and walked away without a word. Greta was waiting at the back with 2 steaming cups of chai and a proud smirk. "I got every word," she said. "Dale's going to cry into his client briefings." Janine laughed. "Poor man." "Number lucky man," Greta said, tapping her phone screen. "Your legacy material." Dale's office still smelled like polished wood and patience. He greeted her with the same calm smile, but this time, when he gestured toward the chair, Janine didn't hesitate. She sat like a woman who knew the terms. "I want to make one last change," she said, pulling a folded sheet of paper from her purse. Dale raised an eyebrow. "All right, what are we amending?" Janine laid the paper flat on the desk. Her handwriting, neat and centered, took up only 3 lines. If Melissa contests anything, challenges the estate, files a suit, even sends a lawyerly letter, she's disqualified. From the rest, from future communication, from every part of the plan. Dale studied her, pen poised. "You're sure?" Janine's voice was calm. "It's not punishment. It's a boundary. If she chooses conflict, she chooses absence. I won't let her turn my death into another performance." Dale nodded slowly. "This is ironclad. There won't be a loophole." "There shouldn't be," she said softly. He wrote with quiet precision, then slid the new clause across the desk for her signature. She read every word, then signed with the pen she'd brought herself. She watched the ink dry. Outside, the sky had shifted to that soft gold that made even parking lots feel poetic. Greta was waiting beside the car, phone in hand. "Well?" she asked, already guessing the answer. "It's done," Janine said. "For real this time." Greta handed her the phone. On the screen was the video from the panel, already trimmed and titled. "Want to post it?" Greta asked. "Let the world hear you on your terms?" Janine looked at it for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "No," she said. "The people who need to hear it already have." She passed the phone back and opened the car door. As she slid inside, she glanced up toward the sky. No clouds, just open stretch, and a horizon that belonged to her. The youth center smelled like new paint and lemon-scented floor polish. Someone had left the back doors open, letting the breeze drift through the corridors. It was Saturday morning, early enough that the neighborhood hadn't fully woken, but the building buzzed with quiet activity. Janine walked in with a cardboard box in her arms, books neatly stacked, each one chosen with care. Greta followed close behind, arms full of puzzles, watercolor sets, and oversized sketch pads. "You know you're not required to restock the place single-handedly," Greta said, grunting as she adjusted her grip on the art supplies. Janine smiled. "It's not restocking, it's planting." The director, a warm-eyed woman named Claudia, met them in the entryway, her face breaking into an expression that said this wasn't a duty, it was joy. "You're early," Claudia said, accepting the box from Janine and placing it gently on the welcome table. "I like to watch things begin," Janine replied. They led her down a freshly painted hallway, past doors marked with paper signs, music room, teen space, and finally, reading room. The door was propped open. Inside, the walls had been painted a soft sage green. Shelving lined the perimeter, still mostly empty but eager. A pair of armchairs sat beside a low window, and in the far corner, a beanbag the size of a bathtub had already been claimed by two toddlers, napping with picture books open on their chests. Above the entrance, a simple wooden plaque had been installed. It read, "The Janine Avery Reading Room." Greta exhaled beside her. "Well, that's going in my next group text." Janine stood for a long moment, just taking it in. No fanfare, no stage, no microphone, just her name, in a room that promised quiet and imagination and sanctuary. She turned to Claudia, who was now beaming. "Thank you for letting me be part of it." Claudia laughed softly, then pulled her into a hug. "Are you kidding? You are the part of it." The staff helped them shelve the books and organize the art cart. Janine stayed for over an hour, watching, listening, answering the little questions the volunteers asked with warm curiosity. One child asked if she was a librarian. She nearly cried. When they left, Greta handed her a bottle of sparkling water and said, "You're glowing again, like a firefly that's been vindicated." They drove back in easy silence, Janine's fingers brushing the inside seam of her pocket, where she'd tucked a crayon drawing someone handed her, a crooked heart with the words, "Thank you, Miss J." That afternoon, the knock on the door was small, uncertain. Janine opened it to find Hallie and Owen standing there, hand in hand, cheeks flushed from the walk. Travis's car idled at the curb, engine humming. "We told Dad we'd only stay an hour," Hallie said, eyes wide with hope. Janine stepped aside instantly, opening the door wide. "Then let's make it a good one." She had already prepped the dough that morning. The cookies were shaped like stars, still warm from the oven. She let them pick their own sprinkles and taught them how to crack eggs into a bowl without shells. Owen got flour on his nose. Hallie licked the spoon. They played a quiet board game at the kitchen table, and when the timer on the oven beeped, the kids cheered like it was Christmas. Janine didn't ask questions, didn't pry. She just gave them her full presence, and when it was time to go, she handed them a box of cookies wrapped in wax paper and a card that said, in her script, "I love you. Always. Come back soon." They hugged her tightly. Hallie whispered, "I wish we could stay longer." Janine kissed the top of her head. "I know, but even little visits can mean a lot." She watched them climb into the car, watched Travis nod once, grateful, tired, maybe both, and drive away down the quiet road. She stood on the porch a long while after they were gone, not sad, just full. That night, as the moon edged high over the lake, Janine lit a single candle and sat at the desk in her sunroom. She opened her journal, wrote the date, and smiled as she filled the page with the details of her day. The last sentence read, "I am finally the author of how I am remembered." Her phone buzzed once, face down beside her. She didn't reach for it immediately. When she finally flipped it over, the screen glowed with a single new text. "Melissa, we need to talk. No greeting, no warmth. Just that same tight signature she knew by now." Janine read it once, and instead of answering, she picked up her pen. There were better things to write back to. The Santa Fe Art District was humming, but not loud. There was a rhythm to it, brush strokes on canvas, wind chimes in alleyways, the low murmur of people speaking softly so the color could do most of the talking. Janine moved through the market without hurry, letting her eyes wander where they wanted. Her scarf trailed behind her, a soft pop of lavender against the adobe backdrop. She stopped often, at a weaver's table, at a booth of turquoise jewelry, at a display of handmade journals bound in worn leather. She touched everything with reverence, nothing rushed, nothing wasted. She didn't need anything, and that was precisely why she could choose. At the edge of a row of stalls, a vendor sat cross-legged on a stool behind a narrow table of ceramic teacups, each one different, no patterns, just color. One cup caught Janine's eye, pale blue with flecks of gold, like someone had melted the sky and given it freckles. She picked it up. The glaze was warm under the sun, irregular, human. "Hand-painted," the vendor said. "A woman in her 60s, smile soft, hands stained with dye. No duplicates." Janine held it for a moment longer, then reached into her bag and handed over the cash. She didn't ask for a box. She carried it, bare and careful, like it was a message she already knew how to read. As she turned the corner toward a bench shaded by an overhanging gallery, her phone rang. "Greta?" She answered with a smile, already forming. "It's official," Greta said. "The reading room's open, full shelves, tiny chairs, and a juice box explosion in the corner already." Janine closed her eyes, letting the words settle. "That's the legacy I want." "You should have seen them, Jay. Kids everywhere. One girl made a sock puppet and named it Janine the Giraffe." Janine laughed. "I'll take it." She spent the rest of the afternoon wandering. She didn't take photos, didn't post anything. She bought a small bundle of postcards at a tucked-away shop with uneven floors and a radio playing old jazz. Back at her rental that evening, a quiet adobe casita with clay walls and a single red chair by the hearth, she poured herself tea in the new cup, sat at the table, and wrote. Each postcard was addressed to either Hallie or Owen. The first one read, "Dear Hallie, I found a painting today that looked like the sky when you used to fall asleep on my shoulder." The second, "Dear Owen, I saw a boy today laughing so hard his whole sandwich fell apart. I thought of you instantly." She signed them simply, "Love, Nana." No return address. Some things, she knew, were meant to travel forward, without tracking. She lit a fire in the small stone fireplace, tucked a wool throw around her legs, and curled into the red chair. The novel in her lap had been half finished for weeks. Tonight, she started from the beginning. Outside, the wind moved through the pine trees like an old song. Her phone buzzed on the table beside her. She didn't reach for it. Not this time, not this place. Instead, she turned the page. She read slowly, savoring. She sipped tea from the sky-colored cup. She felt the crackle of wood, the ache in her feet from a day well wandered, and the quiet that comes when you no longer need to be understood by the wrong people. There had been a cost, yes. The unraveling of expectation, the silence after slammed doors, the grief of a love that kept setting itself on fire and calling it warmth. But in the ashes she had found herself, her voice, her rhythm, her peace, and it was no longer up for negotiation. She closed the book gently on her lap, letting her gaze rest on the low fire's soft glow. A log shifted, sending up a flicker. She smiled and said, only to herself, only once. Turns out, the cost of being taken for granted was a lot higher than they thought.